long-term wealth. See you guys over there. Hello, potential Smoky Mountain short-term rental investors. This episode of the Smoky Mountain short-term rental show is about common things that you are going to run into in terms of managing specifically here in the Smokies. So there are things that happen in the Smokies that don't happen in Florida, for example, or Scottsdale or anywhere else you might own things. So today we're going to talk about those things and how to manage those. So I have three of the best managers I know in the Smokies. I've got Luke, Carl, Chuck Kramer, and Tim Grillo. And guys, if you just want to give a quick intro, I know some of y'all have been on previous episodes, but introduce yourself anyway. Luke, you go first.
Yeah, I'm Luke. I am the shaman of short-term, cash flow Carl, and I am also the host of the short-term rental management podcast. So please give me a like, give me a follow over there, give me a 5-star review, because that's what we are in the business to do. So I'll turn it over to Chuck.
Can you tell that Luke has 15 years of radio DJ experience?
No, I'm just a big Ric Flair fan is really all that is.
Hey, Chuck Kramer, longtime Smoky investor, restaurateur as well, and start my own series we'll talk about soon.
Can't wait to hear that. My name's Tim Grillo. I'm an agent up here in the Smokies with a short-term shop and own several properties up here as well, and got some long-terms in Kentucky and some other short-terms in some other states. So yeah, and I am not a radio DJ.
All right. So today we're talking about things that you might run into management wise. So guys, what we're not talking about today are general things like how to set up property management software, things like that. These are Smoky specific things that can and will happen when you own in the Smoky Mountains. So do I want to give the first topic, or do one of you want to start off the topic?
It's your show. Let it roll. Go ahead.
Okay. So the first thing that comes to mind for me is wells. Our wells. First thing is, I think it's whatever. Somebody email me the correct grammar for that, because that's going to bother me the rest of the show. So let's talk about wells. The majority of the properties in the Smokies are on wells and septics. And there are certain things that you're going to run into with owning a well. It's just inevitable. And Luke, what are those things?
Well, here's the deal with a well. The water comes out of the ground, so it's got its own personality. You never really know what to expect. And that's not a big deal. Most people think that well water, and they're right, that well water is better than city water. City water meaning it comes, pumps in from the city. You pay for it by the gallon, and it's got a bunch of bleach and all that kind of crap in it. Fluoride. It's good for your kids' teeth and all that other crap they tell you. And, most people, especially people that live in the country, will tell you that well water is superior to quote unquote city water. Now, the downside of this is that when you're renting this home to people who are coming from city water and have no idea or have never dealt with well water in their life, it can be a little sticky sometimes. So what you get is you get one of a few different things. You'll get colors. The color you get most often is generally a little bit red, and it's iron. Iron also comes with a smell, which smells like metal, believe it or not, because it's exactly what it is. Although it's coming from the ground, coming from the minerals in the earth, basically. And then you get other smells such as sulfur, which is not good. Sulfur, again, a mineral, whatever, vegetable mineral, one of the two. And it does not smell good. It smells like rotten eggs, to be easy on it. It's pretty nasty. Can be corrected. Any of these problems, by the way, can be corrected. And then we have things like silt, which is a fancy way to say basically you've got some sand kicking up in your water, and that can be corrected as well. But anyway, but what I do is if I buy a new house, I'll have my inspector, or if I'm able to go there myself, I'll fill up a glass. I'll do two things. I'll turn on all the water in the whole house at the same time, and plug the tub so I can see what's doing there, as far as, large amounts of water at one time. And then I'll fill up a glass and smell it and see if it looks like anything. And then you also want to, if you got a hot tub, open it up and see what that looks like. Of course, that water's probably been sitting there for a few days at least, so who knows what it looks like when it's fresh, So all of these issues can be fixed with filters of various types of filters. They have these big whole house filters that look like what you fill your kids' balloons up with at a birthday party, and they fill them with different types of, I think what do they call them? There's a name for that. I'll come back to that.
Medium.
Medium. Thank you. And the medium is changed based on what attributes your water is dealing with. And they can get rid of almost any problem out there. These filters are around, anywhere from $500 to maybe $4,000 for a high-tech system. And these are going to be something that you're going to change. It's got a lifespan, in other words, about the same lifespan as a water heater, somewhere around maybe 10 years, maybe 15 years if you get lucky. And of course, you have them serviced and you have them checked out. And then, of course, water softeners come into play if you've got hard water. And water softener can deal with a lot of these minerals and smells and things as well. And that's enough for me. I'll turn it over to one of the other guys. Where do we go from there, guys?
That's a lot of well stuff. But it's all spot on. I don't know, Luke. I don't know. We actually recommend to our guests. We let them know it's well water and say, basically you may want to bring bottled water to drink, but for everything else, it's fine. And just to kind of alleviate that, some people freak out about it. I grew up on Iowa and drank out of a well my entire life, so it doesn't bother me at all. But some people get a little queasy about it.
My case, the one place I have it's on a well, people actually compliment me on the water, say it's the best stuff they've ever had, and so it can go that way too.
Yeah, I agree. I've actually got 3 out of the 4 of ours are on wells, and none of them have any kind of water treatment system at all, and it's great water. I just the one in the valley is like the Wares Valley. It's like the best water I've ever had.
Yeah, and that's where ours is at. So
yeah, there are people, I see them in the Facebook group sometimes. There are a few little areas in the Smokies, like on the side of the road, where there's a pipe stuck out of the mountain, and it's for drainage of the rainwater, but people will take their big like thermoses and stuff and go fill it up with out of those
fountain of youth,
pipes.
baby.
Yeah. And on Facebook, people are posting like, okay, this one's doing really good today. There's a lot of water coming out of it, or don't go to this one. It's dry. And like, it's a thing. It's a subculture of people.
Well, in essence, what you're talking about is a well. All they're doing is putting a hole in the ground and water comes out of it. And it's exactly what's going on there, And another thing to keep in mind is there is a pump. Your well's going to be anywhere from, 50 feet to 700 feet deep. They got to go until they hit water. And then they drop a pump down there, which has electricity going to it and a big line of electrical wires, and that runs to your breaker box. And that pump's going to go out as well. Also has a lifespan. Again, 10, 15. I've had them last 20 years.
Yeah, pumps usually go a while.
Yep. Not that expensive either. How much does the last? I think my last well pump was maybe $1,800.
Yeah, a couple grand. And so you got your well pump. Yeah, I mean, components wise, you got the pump, and then you got a pressure tank somewhere. I'll say in your basement or crawl space, but it could be in a closet or something. And then I don't know. You want to talk about storage tanks? I mean, some wells, and it typically is the higher up the mountain you go, they can be a little bit low producing. Like they put out water, but not enough. So especially for like rental guests, like if it's just a person living there, it's probably not a big deal. But when you start draining hot tubs, every few days and stuff, it puts a hit on it. So what they do is they put in big holding tanks somewhere, either in a crawl space or whatever, and it's basically a reservoir. So depending on where your cabin is, you may have holding tanks. I have it in one of our cabins, and it gives you a buffer, if you run out of water.
Yeah, it's for a low yield well is what they're saying there. And basically, whether it's a gallon per minute issue or just a lack of water in general issue, because a rental property is obviously, especially with a hot tub, is going to get way more use than somebody living in it, unless you got a bunch of kids and taking baths. We understand that as well. But I think what you're really looking for is 5 gallons per minute is, I think, just on a quick Google search anyway. And if you're running lower than that, or you have a low yield well that doesn't have, a massive amount of gallons, that's when they'll do those holding tanks. And it's literally, they're storing water for future use. So they'll pump the well when the house is not being used and fill that tank up. And then the water comes out of the tank rather than out of the well. That's kind of how that goes. Is that about right, Chuck?
Yep. You nailed
I
it.
do not personally. I don't personally have one of those, but I've done a lot of research. Anything else on wells? Smells? Now, the sulfur smell, don't let it drive you nuts. It is fixable. It is annoying. And it is really annoying if you didn't know about it before you actually went to the home, like, because your home inspector might not catch that. So that's a good little tip there. If you're doing a home inspection on something in the Smokies for your first purchase, ask the inspector to fill up a glass of water and smell it, or even better, hire an actual filter place to go over there and inspect the water for you and give you kind of a parts per million type of situation as far as your water quality.
One thing I wanted to hit on wells too is if you have a well emergency, like if for some reason the water is not working, they do have they have water delivery. They will bring you a big tank of water, but you have to have holding tanks. They'll come fill it up if you get into that situation, but the holding tanks have to be there already.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much said it. They come with a huge tank. It's usually about 1,000 gallons, and they'll either fill up your holding tanks, and then I've actually had like where my holding tank wasn't all the way empty, and they put the rest of the water down your well shaft, and they'll actually put the water right in your well. So, wow. My one property though, it seems like about once, maybe twice a year, it'll actually go dry, and we'll have to get a water delivery. It's like $300-400. They come up, dump a bunch of water in, and then it'll go for months and months and months again.
Well, hold on that, because you're going to scare a lot of people with this dry well thing. Now, what happens if I buy a house with a well and it goes dry? To my knowledge, that doesn't really happen. Or if it does, I mean, if you get a situation where it's like worst case scenario, which is very rare, you could always go deeper, right?
Yeah, you can go deeper, and you can actually, they frack them as well. That's another thing that people do is they'll go in and actually frack the well. And I don't know a ton about that. I know of other people that have had that done. It's been successful to bring kind of a well that, it can knock out, you brought up silt and stuff. It kind of knocks that out and reactivates the well, if you will. So.
And an ultimate worst case scenario, in my experience, is somewhere around anywhere from maybe $15,000 to $20,000 to drill a brand new, shiny, spanking brand new well, give or take.
With years of service, yeah, yep.
And then you got water for free forever. Well, not for free. You got to pump electricity to it, but pretty close to free.
Yeah, and with the ongoing maintenance, it probably runs about the same as being on city water. So,
yeah, I agree with that.
So it's just one extra system to manage. It's not anything to be afraid of if you're not somebody who's ever owned anything on a well. I mean, we'd never owned anything on a well when we bought our first one, and it's not anything to be afraid of. So let's move on to septic. So what are the things that can potentially go wrong? Because I know a lot of people who've never been on a septic tank are kind of scared of septic tanks. There's nothing to be scared of either. So what are some common occurrences with septic tanks, and how do you manage them?
Oh, man.
This could be a whole podcast. I love septic tanks.
I actually do have
we could do a whole episode on this.
I do have a YouTube video on the subject from a few years ago that is my shining crown. That's like my ultimate moment in history is my YouTube on where does it all go?
Yeah. So I mean, essentially you got a tank in the ground that everything goes into, and it's kind of a deal where solids sink down and the liquids float up, and towards the top of the tank there's an outlet that I'm gonna say it goes out into your yard, which sounds crazy, but this is all a really engineered thing that people have been doing for years. And the way the lines are done and they're buried in the ground, it basically uses the system to filter it out, and it's clean water when it comes out, and it's done. And so the biggest thing with septics is you're not supposed to put things down that don't decompose, and guests are never going to understand that or know that. So my biggest thing that I tell everybody is, in a normal situation, you're going to want to pump a septic every 5 years or whatever. In a rental situation, just do it once a year. And it's like $350. It's cheap insurance. And they basically, when they pump it out, they're pumping out all the stuff that's not supposed to be in there. They come in with a big tank and suck it out. It's disgusting. But if you do, the worst thing that can happen to your septic is it fills the tank up with solids, whether they're decomposable or not. And when those go all the way to the top, and if those solids start to go out your field lines and plug your field lines, that's the worst thing that can happen to a septic. If you get plugged field lines, then you're looking at digging up all those field lines. So the best way to not have that happen is not let your tank get that full of solids. And that's where you just pump it out once a year.
Not to mention that it becomes very fragrant.
Yes.
Yeah.
You'll probably know when things are acting up.
Yeah. Either you'll know or your guest will tell you.
And sometimes they can be difficult to find. Most septic guys are going to be able to find it, locate it pretty easily. They can just go in your crawl and see where the PVC is exiting the home, and then go out into the yard and figure it out. Or there's also diagrams at the county for most homes, but they're very, they're archaic. I will say that. So it's not going to be, like, here it is, So sometimes they're hard to find. So there's that. And so if you do get it, we're recommending here to get it pumped as soon as you buy the home. It's like the week after you buy the home, get it pumped. There's a very good chance it's never been pumped, because most owners don't even know what these things are or how to handle them, because they live in a city somewhere else, out of state owners, almost everybody here. And when you do that, put a riser on it, because so the riser basically just says, here it is. And then that way, next time you need to get it pumped, it's super easy. They can just open it up right there. They don't have to dig up the actual tank and pop the lid off of it. Riser is basically just like a fancy cover for the lid.
No, that's a great tip. You want to do that absolutely first thing. So that'll take your first pumping from, $350 to maybe, 700 or something like that to add the riser if it doesn't have one. Some of the high tech septic companies, they have a little egg that they call it. They actually flush down, and it's like it got a transmitter in it, and they can use that to find the tank if it's a hard to find one. Usually they're pretty good about finding them. These guys know what they're doing. Another tip, if you meet the guy there, don't shake that guy's hand.
Right. my septic guy he also keeps homemade moonshine in his truck. So
I was about to say, there is one where you can they'll sell you some moonshine too.
I'm not going to give his name out because I don't know that that's legal, but I may have partaken in the past.
It's a moonshine capital. What do you expect?
Yeah.
But wells aren't only for the mountains, so remember that too. So,
and shit runs downhill. That is a very good tip.
Yeah. Get your riser put in, put a lock or some type of seal on that cover. Otherwise, kids are going to be dropping rocks down there to hear the splashing because they don't know what it is.
Really? That is not something that ever would have occurred to me as a kid to do.
Well,
usually
your parents probably told you not to play around with it.
But I know
all my
says not to
risers
check your cameras, but if you check them later, you'll probably see it.
All my risers have a plastic lid on top that has screws to take it off.
Yeah, it's got you'd have to unscrew it. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's disgusting.
Yeah, well, what did you expect?
Yeah, that's the reality of it.
We should move on.
Yeah, well, moving right along here. Another thing, it doesn't happen every year, but it happens sometimes. I would say maybe every other. Well, before last year, it hadn't happened in 3 or 4. Anyway, snow in the Smokies, and not necessarily snow that's the problem, but ice. So it rains and then it gets below freezing and then you have ice. Doesn't happen every year. Really doesn't snow much in the Smokies at all. It might just get an inch or two. Usually it's gone within a day. But what can happen, because it doesn't snow much, a lot of people who are from the northern states who are really used to snow, where their cities are really well equipped for it, they're like, what's the problem? Why is everything closing down because it snowed? It's because northern cities like Chicago, for example, has a lot of infrastructure to deal with that. You have snowplows, you have all of this, tax dollar allocated services to make it to where you can continue with regular life during that time. The Smokies is not like that because it doesn't snow enough for them to have to allocate things that way. So if it snows and there's ice on the roads, it shuts down. So guys, how do you manage guests coming, for example, guests coming in during that time, guests trying to get out during that time? There's lots of things that can happen, like busted pipes. Let's start with incoming guests though, for management purposes.
Communication.
Yeah.
Now, I assume we all have a policy, right? So, Chuck, what's your snow policy, and do you break it?
We simply say we do not refund for weather. We expect our customers to know that ahead of time and make plans appropriately. And we have a weather widget right in our guidebook. They open the guidebook and there's the weather. So there's not much reason for them not to know. Do we break it? Yes.
Right.
On occasion. Because they could do everything right. But it's like that old saying, 4-wheel drive doesn't do you any good if the guy.
So here's my system. My listings say no refunds for weather, period. my guidebook says no listings for weather period. When it actually happens, again, we're talking snow in the Smokies, and this would be very similar to, God forbid, hurricane in Florida. It's a case-by-case scenario, but I do actually issue the refund. My policy is to just let them cancel, not come, and give them their money back if it's like inevitable. I mean, we're talking it's 100% snow for at least, a 6 or 8 hour period, and then no above 32-degree weather for 2 to 3 days, which is really, I hate to say this because everybody in the last 2 years is going to be mad at me, but it's really freaking rare. For it to be below 32 in East Tennessee for more than 24 hours is relatively unheard of. Yeah. We are talking again here, guys, as a guy I'm originally from the Midwest, the same as Tim, a lot of snow. And then I lived in New York City for a very long time. This is the South, and the South is freaking hot, So it is a rare.
And they freak out. They freak out.
They freak out. Yeah, they freak out. Cannot drive in the snow. Everybody's car will be in the ditch. Everybody, So my policy is to go ahead and give them refunds if it gets to the point where it's absolutely inevitable, because it's not worth dealing with them once they're in there. Because if they're in there and it snows, it's a real giant pain in my rear end. Quite frankly, it's not worth the trouble. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Yep.
What about fireplaces? I see a lot of people that will say like, oh, you need to make sure you have a gas fireplace. So if it snows, then your guests still have a heat source. How do you guys handle that?
To me, that's the only reason to have a gas fireplace. I've gotten rid of all mine, and I'll stand behind that. I do not like the Smoky Mountain propane fireplace. They're very common. I've gotten rid of all mine, converted to electric. However, if you have guests in there and there is an impending snow apocalypse, that could potentially keep somebody alive, really. So there's that. And that's another reason I'm going to go ahead and offer them full refund to get the hell out of there. Cause it's, and then also snow, East Tennessee, power outages goes together. There are millions of trees. I mean, just so many more trees than a normal area. And these trees, with the snow comes the wind, and the mountains and the wind it's amplified, so the trees start coming down, and then I got no way for heat. So, now again, propane fireplace is not really going to do much other than possibly keep your ass alive. It's not going to heat a whole house, so I don't know what do you guys do on the fireplace?
They help, and like you said, it could keep somebody alive. Also, this kind of rolls into HVACs. It depends on, how cold it gets and what kind of HVAC you got. If you have a heat pump, which I'll say most of the stuff up here has, they don't keep up once it gets below, 15, 20 degrees, which is rare, but we did have that snap this year. And between the fireplace was enough to supplement the heat pump. The heat pump was having a hard time keeping anything above 60. They ran the fireplace and were able to keep it like 65. And I was able to keep guests in, and they were happy. It was Christmas, and they had a great time. And it just added to their experience, which you don't always get that. But so anyway, I'm a little mixed on too. The propane fireplaces can be a pain, but they can help.
And we have two in our place in the valley. I mean, it really can heat the whole place. But then the other thing is you got to make sure the tank's full. That the only thing worse than having all that happen is to then run out of propane after the first day, because then you can't get a truck up there either. So.
And I'll say generally, like, just building, the way they build buildings here is different than in the north. Luke and I grew up in Iowa, Nebraska. Frozen pipes weren't even a thing because they did things. Here they are. And it's because it's so rare. It's not normal for it to get as cold as it did this year. And, people get all, kind of wadded up that like, oh my gosh, my house isn't built right. The pipes are all frozen. And, you can argue that, but they're all like that here. And that's just because the building codes are different, because we're not in a climate that's normal. So there are workarounds that you can do to kind of protect your house on that, but none of it's 100% foolproof unless you go in and do like a full custom something, because the power goes out, heat tape's not going to do anything. So
yeah, you bring up an interesting point, because again, I grew up in Nebraska, and you grew up right down the road from me. I never heard of a frozen pipe ever.
Oh my God. Yeah. Luke, the first time that it was getting really cold, in the house that we lived in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I was going through dripping all the pipes, and he's like, "What does that mean, dripping?" And I was opening. You also, open the cabinets, and he looked at me like I was doing the craziest thing he had ever seen in his life. He was like offended. He was like, "What are you talking about, dripping the pipe?" Like, because they will freeze and then they will burst. And
I was like, were you raised in a barn? I mean, who does something like this? And then it turns out it is true. So if you're a Yankee buying a house in the Smokies, if it gets below 30, ask somebody to drip the sink, and you really want them to drip at one, the furthest from the street, from the water source, the well, is ideal, or all of them is ideal. And just a tiny little drip. It's not about the water coming through. It's about relieving pressure. I ended up doing a ton of research on this because, once again, my wife was right.
As usual.
My wife's from Dallas, and we went through the same thing at one point. I was like, she was the first time it got cold when she moved a little up north. I'm like, what are you doing?
It's the craziest thing I've ever seen, right? But it turns out it's real. It's a thing.
Yeah. So drip the pipes or drip the sinks. And all right. So kind of along those same lines, but it doesn't always have to be snow related. How do you manage a steep driveway? Because that is really common in the Smokies, especially for view properties. If you want a view, you got to go up the mountain. And a lot of people, myself included, when I first started going out there, and Luke especially, I mean, my God, Luke has left me at the top of mountains because he was having a panic
attack. Leave you. I have definitely threatened to leave my truck a time or two. But
so how do you manage? Because you definitely want to make sure that they're not surprised by it, because I think that the bad reviews are spurred by guests being negatively surprised by something. So if you make sure they know about it way off in the future before they even book, then I think you're in good shape. But what's the three of your advice about having a cabin?
Are we talking about steep roads in general, or steep roads in snow situations, or both?
In general.
Upfront expectations, 100% is like your first. You have to, if you got a driveway this steep, you gotta let them know and be bold about it. And it's scary at first, but I have one. It's steep that, we've had, you're going to have at least some point in time in your life, you're going to have somebody at the bottom crying on the phone that says their car won't go up it. And, you may have to coax them up or whatever. But, the reality is, outside of bad weather, the cars will go up the driveway. It's just, if you're not used to that, it is scary, so 100% disclosure and let people know 4-wheel drive is required in bad weather. And I don't even say snow. I just say bad weather, because to be honest, if you're not experienced driving on that, it can be tricky in the rain, somebody that's used to it goes right up at like nothing, but if you're a flatlander, like I used to be, it can be tough.
Or like a lot of our Florida guests.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
But even the leaves in the fall can create problems. So it doesn't even have to be bad weather.
It's all about expectations with guests in general, which, by the way, we do absolutely love our guests. That's why we're in business, and we are here to provide people with excellent times on their vacation. But the steep road is 100% about expectation, which most of the business is. And if I have one that is really kind of scary for your first time, and I'll let them know, hey, this is a steep 1-lane road, and it's got gravel. It is scary. If you're from Ohio, if you're a flatlander, it's scary. And every now and then somebody will say, hey, I saw about your road, but I'm worried, can I get up there in a Toyota? Can I get up there in sometimes they'll even say an SUV, like a RAV4 or something. And I always discourage them, because if they are even asking about the road, it's probably not going to go well, but I do take it the other direction. And I use it as a part of my marketing. Like, if you want to come to the mountains and go up a mountain and look at a mountain, come to this house. This is cool because as the saying goes, I don't know where I got it from, but you cannot see the world if you do not climb the mountain.
That's a great tip too, Luke. When you put your disclosure in and be upfront about it, you don't have to be scary. You can word it in a manner that says, look, when you get the top, it's gonna be well worth it. After time or two, you get used to it, blah, blah, blah. Make it sound nice, but don't sugarcoat that it's still a hill.
And we got enough guests to go around. There's people that want the mountain experience, and then there's people that want the flatlander experience. So just be obvious about what you're actually renting.
Yeah. We provide a video. actually, it's two videos. We have one of the private road to our place, and we furnish it to them right after they book because there's no real way to get it to them ahead of time. So they have an opportunity to look at it and change their mind if they want. And then we have a second video of a drone flying level next to it to really give you an idea of the angle of the or the incline.
That's fantastic. Did you make this video yourself? I would love to hire your video guy.
Yeah, did it myself.
Okay, cool. I love that. That's brilliant.
Even got a soundtrack.
Oh wow, what a tip.
What's the soundtrack? Black Sabbath or something? Or
no, it's one of my brother's songs called Country Road.
Oh, okay.
So
well, I learned something. At certain times of year in the Smokies, it is very possible that your guest is going to open the door and walk in, and there are going to be a large amount of dead ladybugs in the house. Why is that? And what do you do when that happens?
Let's just say or flies or bugs.
Yes.
Yes, tradition. The flies were new this last year, and they are saying that they're maybe not coming back. I had a whole podcast on that on the short-term rental management show. But anyway, go ahead, Chuck, with the ladybugs.
Good old ladybugs. Well, there's two things we deal with. There's ladybugs, and then there's the Asian beetles. Their behavior is very similar, but one is beneficial and the other is not. And those Asian beetles bite. But you can walk in your house and you find them, on the floor by the windows. They're seeking warmth for the most part, so that you're going to find them on the sunny side of the house. They will find a way in. You can hire people to come every week and reseal your house, and they're still going to find a way in. As with many things we've talked about, the best way to deal with them is let your guests know ahead of time. They're not dangerous. They're not going to hurt you. In our case, we even have a dust buster labeled for ladybug use. It sits on a charger right in the living area where we tend to have the problem in this one house. And since I put that in and put it in the description, I haven't heard a peep from anybody.
That. That's awesome.
Forewarned is forearmed, right?
Ladybug season is give or take early October to mid-November. Usually they go away at the first or usually realistically the second or third or fourth freeze of the year, which again could be December, really. So they're looking for heat. They're looking for warmth to stay alive, is what it is. And
actually, where we are, we're at higher altitude, so we have trouble starting in the spring. So, and all through the summer.
Oh, really? Interesting.
They'll try to come in at night.
I don't really see any ladybugs unless they're like coming out of the woodwork because they were dormant. Maybe that's what it is.
That could be.
All right. So another living organism specific, or not necessarily specific to the Smokies, but mountain markets, bears. So what do we need to tell our guests about black bears in the Smokies? Because they will probably, in certain areas like Chalet Village and Gatlinburg, they're more likely to run across them than other areas, but I've seen them in a lot of places. So how do you guys manage warning them about bears, telling them what to do and what not to do and all that stuff?
Don't take selfies with the bears. That's what I tell them.
Yeah, this is not a zoo. They're not tamed. We put it in our listing. We remind people in one of the early messages. We send them it's in our guidebook, and we send them a link directly to that part of the guidebook about 3 days before they arrive as a reminder. And we put it in everything we can. The major things: don't leave trash out. Bears will find it. Don't ever approach a bear. Before you walk out the door, just take a look around so that you don't surprise a bear. If you see a cub, move away, try to get back into the cabin or your car. And then, of course, don't leave food in your car. Always keep your car doors locked.
They will get inside your car. I've seen so many videos. It hasn't happened to me personally, but I've seen a lot of videos about bears getting in cars.
I've had one in the back of my truck. He climbed up in there and had a party. And you kind of just got to let them get done.
If you got bears, you've got trash. I mean, you can get, they will go away if there's nothing for them to eat. So it's either you or your neighbors that they're eating something,
Yeah. And don't ever feed them. In fact, if the wildlife people find out that they've been fed, they will chase you down.
And I'll say in some of the common, some of the resorts, the bears kind of know what time turns are. You're gonna see more bears around the time the cleaners are there moving trash around, and they know it. And so again, I think Chuck pretty well nailed everything. It's disclosure.
Yeah.
I don't remember where it's from, but we have a link that we send that is like an external source about like all you need to know about black bears, and it's kind of the same stuff Chuck just said. Yeah, that's what it is. It's we send that so it's not coming from us, just so that it's just a third party source that's educating about bears. And they're awesome, and we tell people to enjoy them and watch them from a distance and all that stuff.
A lot of people come just for the bears.
And you need a bear-proof trash can. So if you don't, your house will likely come with one when you buy one. It doesn't mean it's not in bad shape. So if you need to replace it or you don't have one at all, you can Google that. There's a couple places that do that. Just Smoky Mountain bear-proof trash can. You can find a couple places out there. They're easy to find.
And it's not just the trash can. It's actually an enclosure for the trash cans. There are places you can buy something called a bear-proof trash can. It's not.
Hot tub.
The bears can't open it. They'll drag it down the road.
It's a good idea to secure the cover on your hot tub. They also love hot tubs as much as they love getting in cars. And they'll get in your hot tub and chill out and take a bath. And so, there's different ways to do that. Some people just run a cable over them with a hook, or some of the newer ones have like latches. But in a bad situation, a bear can mess up a cover. If they want to crawl on top of it, that's kind of worst case scenario. And they'll mess her up, but not too big of a deal. And that's pretty rare.
And the last note I have on that is, remember, bears climb. One of our homes, our top deck is 80 feet off the ground. Bears are on it all the time.
So that slides us
tells me some of our guests probably left food out.
That slides us into both hot tubs and grills. Should we tackle the grills quickly? Because that's going to be the same guy that does the grill. My grill system is this. I get a park grill. It is cemented in the ground, a decent amount of space from the home, so they really can't burn it down unless something horrible were to happen. And I do not play with propane or charcoal. Well, these are charcoal, but they're not like a Weber that you can move around. And I love the fact that you can't move it. Therefore, the chances of them bringing your house down are much smaller. So that's my system. Propane is way cooler, nicer, easier. Some folks would prefer the charcoal, so that's there's that. But that's what I do. You can get the grill, the park style grill, from the same guy that does the bear trash cans. So I don't know what you guys do.
Similar. If you have a propane grill or a Weber style or whatever, portable, you need to chain that thing somewhere or cable it, because people will move it. They'll move it. I mean, I don't want to say this, but they'll move it inside. You don't want them to be able to put the grill where they want it, because they will. They'll move it on your porch. They'll melt your siding. They'll do whatever. So I prefer the park style grills as well, cemented in the ground. That's 100% my preference. But if you're not going to do that, I highly recommend securing your grill somehow.
Yep.
I had a grill. I had a fence burned down from a grill, and that was the end of it for me. Park style only.
Yeah. And the park styles, you got to check. You got to still clean them, and you got to check them every so often to see what condition the grates are in. The grates often need to be replaced about every 1 or 2 years, depending where you are, how much rain we got.
Awesome. Well, that's another segue into the next thing that you should have this in your Smoky Mountain rental always, not because it's going to make you so much more money, but because everyone else has one and you need to be on par with everyone. And that's a hot tub. Mm-hmm. So what are some common issues we run into with hot tubs?
Owning them?
Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, a hot tub is really pretty simple. You got a pump, and you've got what they call a spa pack, which is like kind of the brains and the heater and everything's all kind of in that one unit. And then you got an upper control. And, Luke's going to tell you, don't ever fix a hot tub. But, in the event that you do need to fix a hot tub, those are, the three, you got a few sensors and stuff. Yeah, I mean, they get cleaned, they get drained and cleaned every turn, so.
Well, and just to clarify what he's saying, never fix I'm a never fix anything guy. I always replace everything. I will fix a hot tub, though, because there's a lot of parts like a pump or the jets. I mean, that's a real easy fix. So if the hot tub is under 5 years old, I will go, I'll replace the pump and things like that. Now, if the damn tub cracks, then no. I mean, that's not something you want to fix and play around with. It's going to look terrible and it's probably going to start leaking again. In general, I will not let a hot tub go as long as, say, an HVAC. If I got issues on a hot tub and it's over 5 years old, it's probably gone, because it is a huge part of their vacation. They are extremely excited about this hot tub. They're going straight to the hot tub, getting right in it. It's one of the main reasons they picked your house. You'll hear that all the time. I picked your house because it had a hot tub. Well, they all have hot tubs, So, if my rule of thumb is, if they can touch it, if they're touching it and using it, such as a washing machine, dishwasher, hot tub, it needs to be nice in a short-term lease. That's where I'm at in my career. In the early days, I couldn't afford nice. Nothing wrong with that. You just got to adjust your listing and your pricing accordingly. Today, I like to fetch a premium on my rents, and you can't get a premium, and you can't, more importantly, get smoking reviews unless you got really nice stuff. So that's what he meant by don't fix it, replace it. This is my little speech on that.
You should consider them basically disposable unless you have the hard vinyl ones. But the foam ones that are like, covered with the fake vinyl, or just vinyl, the fake leather, you're going to go through those probably once every year, 18 months. Weather, people, wildlife, it's just a fact. And sometimes they just look grungy. And as Luke said, first impressions are everything. People walk up, see a really grungy top on the hot tub. It doesn't matter how great that hot tub is at that point in time. They're going to have a negative attitude about it right away. Spend the money.
I really do like the hard covers. I just got one of the hot tubs with the hard cover on it, and it's awesome.
Came with it, or was it a replacement?
It came with it. It was a brand new hot tub, and it came with the hard cover. And
can I get a hard cover on one that didn't come with a hard cover? I don't know.
I'm not sure on that.
That sounds appealing to me. I might have to look into that.
They're actually easier to open. They've got some like a lever on it that you pull, and it opens. It's like a soft open cabinet, kind of. It's the way it works. It just seemed, I don't know. I wanted to give it a shot, so I got one, and so far I like it. But we're only a few months in, so we'll give it a year or two before I love it.
Excellent.
Hot tub was my last point to hit. Do you guys have anything extra that you want to? Oh, okay.
Sorry. Keep in mind, on the hot tub, you're going to get a message that says your hot tub is broken. It's not actually broken. It means they push too many buttons and they put it into sleep and or economy mode. You can get it out of economy mode. I would recommend finding a video for your particular hot tub and how they call it the top side. That's the buttons on the top. Find your video on YouTube, put it in your guidebook. That's what I do, and then I can refer back to that if and when they are had 16 too many Coronas and put it in sleep mode. And Chuck, you keep bringing up guidebook briefly. What are you saying what are you using for a guidebook?
I'm using TouchStay, but there's other options out there too. You just got to figure out what you want to have in your guidebook and make sure the one you pick will handle that.
I'm also using TouchStay. There's
TouchStay, yeah, they're the best.
Hopefully would be the other.
Mm-hmm.
Another first impression thing on the hot tub, not to keep beating that horse, but on the top side controls, you will get people, they peel the buttons and stuff. They get faded, they get kind of wore off. People will peel them away. That's just a sticker, and you can they're like $5. You can so that's something we actually put on our spring maintenance. We just replace it every year. You can go and order them, or you can have your handyman do it, or a hot tub person do it, but they'll literally just pull a sticker off, clean it up, put a new one on there, and it looks brand new, and it just gives it a crisper look. New cover, new sticker. It's another first impression thing. If your sticker's half peeled off, or you can't read the words or whatever, it just looks old. And really, the rest of the hot tub can be fine. It just needs touched up. So, and that's super cheap, super easy.
And if you want a real estate agent that knows all this stuff to help you buy a house, I know we weren't going to go there, but I'm going there. Tim does that. Avery does that. That's what we do with the short-term shop. And if you guys are impressed with what we know, it's because we're the best in the business. We'd be happy to help you on a purchase of your home, theshorttermshop.com.
All right. Anything else you guys can think of that you run into management wise that's specific to the Smokies very often?
Well, one thing we haven't talked about a lot but it's related to some of these, is labor, whether it's cleaners or handymen. In the weather situation, not only do we have to worry about our guests, but we have to worry about whether or not our cleaners, our turnover people, can get to our properties to get ready for the next guest. Got to have a backup, and that's true of any time. But you also need to, you need to check on things. Stuff gets stale. People get complacent because they do the same job week after week, or every 3 or 4 days. And sometimes you just need to give a little shot in the arm, a little bonus, whatever it is you think will incentivize your people, because it can get boring.
Be nice to them.
I mean, I whenever I go up, I clean my houses and I get bored.
Be nice to them. So, it's they don't understand. This is a different world than where most owners live in. It's owners are living in Arizona. This is East Tennessee. It's a different language. But I disagree slightly. I not to use that word. It's not the right word, but I don't do a backup. I make sure that my cleaner has some sort of backup. Like, I don't even want to hear about it. Like, if you're not coming to clean my house, you better have somebody else that's going to do it. And that's my system. Like, I'll ask them that when I'm interviewing them, not to dwell on the cleaner thing. That's a whole other call.
Yeah.
But, carpenter bees, that comes up.
Oh yeah.
Similar to the ladybugs, but if you're from Arizona or wherever, they just never seen a carpenter bee. They are a thing, and they are huge.
Again, Iowa, we did not have carpenter bees. I never saw them until I moved to the South, and they freaked me out. They're like the size of they're like a little hawk. And that's an exaggeration. They're not that big, but if you see them, they'll freak you out. And they actually, I'm not 100% certain. I had somebody tell me they don't actually sting at all. They just chew, but if you have a wooden structure in Tennessee, it is going to get hit by carpenter bees. And there's some preventive stuff you can do. You definitely want to get your house sprayed for them. I personally do it twice, both in the spring, like a month and a half apart. And that helps for sure. They're still going to come, and you want to stay on top of the maintenance. What they do is they bore a hole, about, I don't know, the size of your finger in your house or in anything that's wood. And they bore a hole and they go in, live in there, and they lay eggs. And that hole's bad enough, but what tends to happen is the woodpeckers come in behind them, and the woodpeckers want to eat those eggs. So they'll take that tiny little hole and blow it out into a massive, ugly hole. So anyway, usually what I do and what I tell clients is you want to get those holes filled in. Get on a schedule, whether you do it every once a year, twice a year, 3 years, whatever works for you, but fill in the holes, and that keeps the woodpeckers away and keeps it in check. And also, like, as you stain your cabin, there's stains and stuff that you can get, that help, deter the wood bees as well.
Mm-hmm. They are big and scary.
In general, carpenter bees don't sting. It is possible for them to sting. It's the female only. I understand. I could be wrong on that. Maybe it's the male.
How do you know that? Why
I had Jimmy the Bug Guy on my podcast, which is called Short-Term Rental Management.
Yeah, but you're right. These carpenter bees, they're about the size of ping pong balls, and they have no reservations about hovering right in front of your face.
No,
like staring you in the eye.
But no, you do want to stay on. They can do significant damage if you don't stay on top of it, But it's another thing. If you have a system in place and do the system, it's very manageable. It's nothing to be scared of, but it's definitely something you want to be aware of and ready for it. So if it's wood, they're going for it. And a lot of the newer cabins are built. They're using like a hardy board or like a cement siding now, depending on them. And those are way less susceptible to them. I won't say immune because you still have deck posts and other things. But that siding, they don't really get into that. But any of the older, and I say older, it's not that old. anything if it's wood, you're gonna have some carpentry be damaged. And I know we're not really talking inspections right now, but if you're buying in the Smokies, be prepared. The inspection is going to have carpenter bee damage on it, period. And it's just, I hate to say normal, but they all have it.
And speaking of inspections with the hot tub, the joist hangers are going to come up on your inspection. And in the joist, now these days you have to have them, but back when these cabins were built, most of the time you didn't have to have joist hangers. And in the defense of the joist hanger, you do want your deck to be reinforced somehow, some way under the hot tub. That doesn't mean that if it's not reinforced, you don't buy the house. This is a very easy. I've done it myself in past. I don't know that I want to recommend that. Don't hire me to do your hot tub reinforcing, but it can be a relatively easy job. just a couple of 4x and a couple of 2x or whatever the case may be. So maybe just run an additional joist going the opposite direction of the current joist, and then a 6x going down, something like that. But definitely reinforce the hot tub. One more thing on the hot tub. Now we're going down all these rabbit holes. The hot tub is in a ridiculous amount of water, right? And the worst thing for a home is water. So make sure you get, I just use like a French drain, like it's, I don't know what that is, Tim. It's black.
The black corrugated. It's tile, like black tile or, corrugated tiling. Now this is a great point. You can do with that or PVC, but it's a drain. You want to have somewhere for your cleaners to drain the hot tub, because if you don't, they're dumping it right off the side of your deck. Wherever your hot tub is, that's where the water's getting dumped. Because they come in with a big hose and siphon it out, and they dump whatever that holds 500 gallons of water in like 5 minutes, and it'll wash out. If there's a deck post there and a foundation, it will erode it. So I guess where Luke was going with that is run a drain pipe for them. Any handyman, the Smokies can do it, and it gets the water away from your foundation.
Nobody's ever going to see it. You could just zip tie the damn thing if you wanted to. It's just going to get like up underneath the backside of the deck, and because otherwise it will start destroying the backside of your deck and maybe even the foundation, the crawl space. So make sure you're diverting that water. Water's always an issue.
Great point.
Do we want to hit anything on crawl spaces before we go?
I love crawl spaces. I do. I think they're the best. I mean, it depends on where your house is located, right? I prefer a slab if it's in Alabama. If it's in the Midwest, where Tim and I are from, you have to have a basement. It just makes sense because, again, back to the plumbing and the heating and all that stuff. In East Tennessee, the ground is made out of sandstone and it is rock hard. And a crawl space makes the most sense. It is, in fact, a rock. It is, in fact, the sandstone is a rock. What are you, a geologist? Is that
they call them the mountains.
Yes, the mountains. So a crawl space is the best way to do it. And then all the fixings, all the guts of the house, most of them anyway, are in the crawl space. Your plumbing, a lot of times half your HVAC is going to be down there. Your water heater sometimes is going to be down there. So, but it is, especially if you're new and you're looking at an inspection, every single inspection is going to say moisture in the crawl space. And if you're from Minnesota, where there's no crawl spaces, that can be kind of scary because water is the worst thing for a home. But in most cases, a lot of times, I'm not going to get into I did go to home inspector school, but I am not practicing. Water's going to happen. And if it's minimal and it's, a natural like flow from just rainwater runoff, that type of thing, a lot of times it's totally fine. The moisture barrier, what is that? It's a freaking piece of plastic. You could go in there and, you know what I mean? You go to Lowe's and buy a tarp and throw it in there. You got a moisture barrier, basically, is what that is. Anybody else have any thoughts on the crawl? I love crawl spaces. I think they're great, but in East Tennessee.
Yeah. No, you just make sure they're ventilated. That's it.
Anything else that we want to hit on before we go? We need to wrap it up.
Parting comment. Yeah. We've talked about a bunch of things here, but some of the mitigation steps that you need to familiarize yourself with this and have a list of people to call. Don't wait until the problem happens to start scrambling for somebody. Know who to call if you have a well problem. Know who to call if you have a septic problem. Have that list. And make sure you know what kind of air conditioning HVAC system you have. Just take a picture of the labels. It doesn't have to be complicated, but if you're a remote owner, you may need to know it. If someone's going to ask, well, what kind of system do you have? How big is it? I don't know, but I can send you a picture of the label.
Yeah,
that works for most people.
I've never done any of that, and I learned the hard way. Take it from me, do it Chuck's way. It is so much easier to have a plan in place. A lot of times you don't know what you're planning for, so that can be difficult. But he's right, man. Having a picture of your HVAC label, dude, you got to have it. I put it on a spreadsheet.
Everything we're saying is a system. Our system is very similar to Chuck's. We have a Google Drive, and there's a folder for every property in there. And when we buy the property, there's a number of pictures that go in there, and it's HVAC labels, appliances, blah, blah, blah. That's our binder, if you will, of whatever is in there. And it'll surprise you sometimes when like looking at a picture of something that like a guest is having a problem and you just look at it and you're like, oh, well, yeah, I forgot this was that way or whatever. You see a switch on the wall that you forgot was there. And then, hey, the dishwasher's not working. Turn that switch on, or something silly, And so pictures of your own properties are definitely helpful.
Yeah. Everyone's got a camera with them these days. So storage is cheap.
And sometimes, I haven't been too ashamed to ask a guest to send me a picture. If they're having a problem, send me a picture. And sometimes those pictures get saved in my drive because whatever it was, I thought it was useful for later, so. And
I advise you, when you get back home, look at those pictures, get the model numbers, do a quick Google search, find the PDF of the manual, download it to wherever you're storing the pictures.
Look at this guy.
Dang. Yeah, Chuck is next level.
Ninja.
No, I've just gotten a lot of calls. I have to replace appliances and stuff. And then I got to figure, okay, well, what size am I replacing? Do I have enough room for these other models? Because there can be differences in sizes. And having the manual helps you with that information.
And it's people lose their mind a little bit when they're on vacation, and they're supposed to. They kind of forget how to do stuff like work a house. So or it's something. Your shower comes on different than theirs does, and they'll lose their mind over that a little bit. And as you scale, having all this information at your fingertips is awesome.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And hopefully the listeners learned a little something about the common things that you might run into management-wise when it comes to the Smoky Mountains specifically. And again, thanks so much for coming. And we will see everyone on the next episode.